You're listening to the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Bill McIntyre, and it's time for this week's Long Island News, the show that talks to newsmakers and other important people from Nassau and Suffolk County that matter to Long Island and Long Islanders like you. So each week we'll have a conversation about issues that affect all of us. I live on Long Island just like you, and I want to know more about the people making the big decisions that affect all of us. Well, this week, we're happy to welcome for the first time to the show Nassau County Legislator Scott Davis, who represents the 1st District, which is comprised of the Village of Rockville Centre and a majority of the Village of Hempstead. Mr. Davis is an attorney with over 30 years of experience as a litigator, and he has served as a commissioner for the Nassau County Civil Service Commission and the Nassau County Assessment Review Commission. Mr. Davis, welcome to this week's Long Island News.
Bill, thank you for having me.
Thank you for taking the time. So anyway, the bio I just read is short and sweet. I'm told you have an interesting background for this district since you were raised in Hempstead and now you live in Rockville Centre.
That is correct.
And based on how this redrawn district map came out, that's exactly your district.
That is right. If this district were designed for a person to represent it, it would be me. Just because I'm so comfortable in both parts of the district, having grown up in the Village of Hempstead and maintaining contact with quite a number of people, and then migrating over to Rockville Centre and raising my family there. My children went to school there. I've had an opportunity to get to know the community, both communities very well, and the people there as well.
Right. And they are too, disparate, so to speak, as far as ethnics and all
Absolutely.
that.
They're both sides of the coin, really, in terms of the demographics.
Right.
And I just think it's important as a representative to be able to navigate both communities in a way that you can connect with the constituents.
Yeah, definitely. And this is your first year on the legislature.
That is correct. I was elected last November. My anniversary is coming up very soon. And it's been a very informative and educational first year in office.
I was going to ask you, what are your impressions so far?
The number one question most people ask me is, how's it going? How do you like it?
Right.
And I would say to you, I consider it a privilege to be able to represent the residents of District 1. 90% of what I do, I really, really enjoy. I love connecting with the community. I love going to events. I love getting to know parts of the community I didn't know. I enjoy that I have an opportunity as a legislator to get access, to peek behind the curtain and get access to information. And if I ask for a meeting, I get it. And I really like to take that and leverage that to help me do my job better. So that part of it, I really, really enjoy.
Okay, how's the other 10%?
What the 10% that I don't really enjoy so much, and it's sort of like an oxymoron, I don't enjoy the politics. No. And what I mean by that is getting in the way of doing good work. Good government really should be bipartisan. The way I look at it visually is it's a round table. It's not a square table. It's not a rectangle. We should all be at a round table when there's an issue that comes up that's going to affect not only my district, but a countywide district. Mm-hmm. We should sit down and we should have a diversity of opinion. And yes, I am in the minority caucus. And if it's a close call on a particular issue and the majority caucus says, thank you, we appreciate what you say, but we're going to go in a different direction, I understand that. But there's a real lack of communication and consensus building among all of the legislators.
Yeah, right. Well, we see as the American public, we see nationally, okay, and there's an issue, and it's pretty much with the Republican Party. We have an outside entity that calls in and tells them how to vote on things. That's a major split, and it's a major problem. Is that reflected in Nassau County?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And I think that it starts with the county executive. And I think that the county executive really has a great deal of influence on the majority caucus. And so far in my experience I have not seen a single issue that's come up where there was any pushback from majority caucus on an issue that has come down to them through the county executive.
Right.
And don't forget, we have 3 branches of government.
Yeah.
We have the executive, we have the legislative, the judicial. And I think that the legislative branch is sort of melded together with the executive branch. And it's not supposed to be that way. No. It's really is supposed to be a check. And that's the beauty of the 3 forms of government.
Right. But that balance of government, that only works when people have the political will to use the tools that they were given in the law and in the way that it's made up to change those things.
Well, that's exactly my point. And I think those tools aren't being utilized.
Right.
And so...
Yeah, I look at it as, it's like we've heard it before too. They're talking about creating an ethics committee for the Supreme Court or a thing, and we all applaud that. And then when it actually happens, you realize that ethics committee has no teeth. They can scream and say you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that, but they have no power whatsoever to do anything to coerce those people into doing the right thing.
Agreed.
Yeah, you see that a lot. And I think as the populace, there's an issue, and what is the first thing we hear? We're going to create a commission, and we're going to, and we get kind of beaten down by the process, and that seems to be the process. It's like going to court. I'm not guilty, Meanwhile, you're guilty as sin, and
right.
But I can keep delaying, and I can do, and sadly, that's kind of the downside of democracy. You got to give everybody a chance to talk, and for some people, that's too slow.
Well, it's not perfect, but it's the best thing we have.
We got. I agree with you. And two, the idea that around here we call it. It's like government is a lumbering dinosaur. We have some. Your term is 4 years.
2.
Well, and there we go. So. To get a bill started and to get that momentum going, you might need 3 terms to see it.
Yes.
And that would be being optimistic.
Yes.
Yeah. Because we've seen laws introduced and then 10 years later, we're hearing a news story about, it took another step or it did something.
Well, I describe it sort of like the difference between a speedboat and a cruise ship.
There you go. Yeah.
And government is a cruise ship. It just nothing happens quickly, and it's hard to maneuver quick in an expeditious way.
Yeah. And my first thought is that as a lawmaker, if I was in that position, that would be very, very frustrating, and it could be something that I would say, I want to do something else.
Well, I understand that, and somebody has to do it.
Oh yeah.
And you can't get frustrated with it. You have to get your wins along the way. And there are a variety of different things that we do. So some are more long-term and others are short-term. So you focus on what you can do here and now and always have those other things in your pocket moving along. Yeah. And presumably that time will come as well. So you play the long game and the short game.
Yeah, right.
Depending on what the issue is.
I think that politicians in general would get a fairer shake if people understood what the process, okay, you're in as a legislator for 2 years, you come out, people say, so what did you do? Well, I started this and I got this moving and I put my weight behind this thing that they're all good things for us. Yeah, but nothing got done. Well, maybe, but that's not the politician. That's the process.
Right.
And I don't think people are in tune to that at all. I also know kids in school don't even know how a bill is made. We're not teaching them that stuff.
Right.
And that's a shame.
Sure. Absolutely.
And I take us to task, the public. It's our fault at a lot of these things, though, because we have the power.
Well, not only do you have the power, but you have unprecedented access to resources to educate yourself. Mm. And it's easy to be critical of things. It's more difficult to be informed and be a little bit more precise in your criticism. Or even if you're more informed, then maybe your criticism will dissipate because you understand the issue a little bit more.
Right.
And it's as easy as Google.
Yeah. You're listening to this week's Long Island News on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Bill McIntyre, and today we're talking to Nassau County Legislator Scott Davis, who represents the 1st District, which is comprised of the Village of Rockville Centre and a majority of the Village of Hempstead. Let's see. Now, you're a Democrat, so you are in the minority. How does that impact the approach to your job?
So that actually is a source of small frustration for me, because if you don't have meaningful dialogue, it's just, we have the numbers, we really don't care what you think, we'll let you speak, and then we're going to do what we do anyway. Right. And I see that happen quite a bit, where there is no incentive from their perspective, the majority's perspective, to have meaningful engagement, and they don't. Right. And if they have a bill they want to pass, or they want to have an appropriation, or any other those things, they know they have the numbers, and at the end of the day, they may hear us speak. Right. And even if we're opposed to it, or we have good points about it, it's almost never really considered. Yeah. And it's a done deal before it even starts.
I should probably know this. Are legislative sessions televised?
Yes.
Where
all you have to do is go to the Nassau County Legislative website, and you can actually live stream it. And not only is it live streamed, but it's actually recorded, and you could go to any legislative session, click it on, and hear what it was.
Wow. Do you know what that page would be? What would people?
It's nassaucountiny.gov. Right. And right now, as an example, the whole issue with the development of the casino, Nassau County, the Veterans Coliseum, right. All the information about that is on the website. I mean, literally everything, and you could educate yourself quite a bit about what's going on in the process.
I think one of the things that we're going to need nationally, locally, is a and maybe this is a niche business, is fact checkers. You know, we're at the point where I don't care who you are. You're going to say something, we need to fact check.
I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah. Just the traffic and the truth. But people shade that, and to be able to have a source, this might be a good business idea for you.
Yeah, right.
Where you just really source through everything, and you just put it out what the facts are, without shading. And just literally what it is.
Yeah, yeah. We had the students on from Nassau Community a couple of shows ago, and they went to the rally, and so they gave us their impressions. We talked about the lies, and got to the point where, we realize when he lies, and you know who I mean, it's not that he wants you to believe the thing he's saying. It's to cloud the air. And the analogy that I used is, if I bought a new computer and I kept stuffing information into it, eventually it's going to crash. And that's the same thing that's happening here. If Alexander Solzhenitsyn said it back in the 70s, that Americans get too much information. You don't know what's true and you don't know what isn't. Mm-hmm. In his Russian village, he said, our news came from a traveler. A guy walking from the village before us. We could ask him, what's going on? And he could tell us. We could ask him questions. In America, you would think that that's just terrible, but our information was more valuable than what you've got.
Yeah. Well, I think it's actually a little bit more than that. I think the lies are a way to give people an excuse to believe or continue doing what they do in terms of following. If there's a particular issue and you're dead wrong on it and you make a lie about it, well, a believer can say, they can now digest that and parrot it out. And it's a great way to kind of hold your nose and keep going with it instead of really looking at the truth of it. So I also think that's one of the aspects of the lie as well. Right. It's just like, no, that's not true. He said X, Y, or Z. Yeah. And we all really know it's not the truth, but you can use that as an excuse.
I'm looking at more of it as a process that's purposefully being done to create an end condition that will basically end up in chaos.
Yeah, and it obfuscates the truth.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think the truth was lost at the very beginning of it didn't take all the way,
Right.
And you can tell that when you talk to different people. I find myself asking, where did you get that? When someone makes a blatant statement.
Right.
The latest was that FEMA is using money they got to give to illegals. I didn't know that people could be illegal, but apparently. And it's a total lie. Finally, the president came out and said that. But again, we have a system that lets somebody do that. How do you go to court 60 times on the same premise and not have some judge someplace say, don't come back?
Well, I'll tell you why. Because there might just be the one. There might be the one that actually is meritorious. It has merit to it, or it might be true. And you can't just paint with a broad brush like that and say...
It's a democracy, so you can't
deny.
And
it is a democracy, and that's one of the flaws of a democracy.
Yeah.
It's a process.
I've got one for you. We just did that, right? You can't really tell somebody they can't go to court. Yet, you have a cell phone, right?
Yes.
Did you read the terms and conditions?
No.
And everyone answers the same way.
Right.
They all say no. I have a bunch of things here I should touch on. A big topic in the legislature and on our show is the sands, the ownership of the Nassau Coliseum and that whole thing going on. What do you think of that?
My process when I'm dealing with any particular issue is I don't get too far ahead. Mm-hmm. And right now we're in the phase of the process where it's going through its environmental review. And so in our last session, we just adopted the parameters for what the environmental review will be like. Right. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't even get to whether there's going to be approval for a casino, if it gets approved at all from the state. There's a lot of moving parts here.
Yeah.
So whatever the development will be at the Coliseum site, there are environmental impacts. And we now have a glossary of all of the concerns that there may be. And once we get the results of those concerns, we can then review them and make a determination as what's suitable or what's not.
Right.
I don't get further than that. And once we do that, let's see what we're dealing with here.
Right.
Who knows what direction it takes.
Right.
Right now, that's what's in front of us. That's what I want to look at. And that's the next step in the process.
It's a good approach. Instead of taking the whole thing in at once, and this is where the conspiracy theories and all those things come flying in.
I believe that we all kind of have a tendency to want to know the end of the story,
right.
And I suggest that 80% of the things that we believe are going to happen never do.
Right. We should wait for the end of the story rather than write it prematurely.
Well, let's stay in the moment. Let's deal with what's right in front of us and move on from there.
I agree. That's a great attitude. Now, I understand you wanted to speak about the revitalization of downtown Hempstead Village, too.
Well, that certainly is one of the issues that is the forefront of my concerns for the district. So Hempstead, in terms of the actual size, it's the largest village in the state of New York and I believe in the country.
Yes, 750,000 residents.
No, I'm talking about the village.
Oh, okay.
So the village, you have 59,000.
The town of Hempstead.
As per the census.
Right.
And I suspect there are quite a bit more, I would say maybe 75,000 residents in the village of Hempstead.
Okay.
And the heart of Hempstead it's Main Street. And there's always been a struggle to get that back to its day pre-Roosevelt Field.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I think people will come if they feel it's beautiful, it has good products and stores, and they feel safe.
Yeah.
And so aesthetics are one part, safety is another part of that. So I've been working with LaShawn Lukes, who heads the Chamber of Commerce for the Village of Hempstead. And I have to say she's doing a fantastic job in terms of trying to help the store owners get up to speed and work at their best.
Right.
But part of it is beautification as well. And we're working together to try and get that in place. The mayor is involved. And I think that's where it starts. That's the heart of the village. Mm. And from there, we can build out.
Oh, well, and you also mentioned something about balanced development in downtown Rockville Centre.
Sure. Rockville Centre has a very vibrant downtown. They have tons of restaurants and stores and things like that. There are vacancies from time to time. And the idea here is that we want to maintain the charm and the character of Rockville Centre and still move forward developing. Recently, there was a set of buildings on Sunrise Highway, and they haven't been occupied for quite some time. And there was a plan to develop a particular site in the village. And justifiably so, the residents were very concerned about the size of the development and what it required. And eventually it went through the zoning appeals and it was scaled down. Right. So you want to have progress, but you also want to have the community involved in that progress and have a say in what goes on. And you also don't want to take too big of a bite where it just changes the character of the community. And that's one of the beautiful pieces about Rockville Centre. It does have a certain charm and character to it. Yeah. So you really want to thread that needle between development and maintaining its charm.
When you come up with the equation, share it with all the other towns because they're all going through that same
thing.
Well,
the necessary ingredient, as far as I'm concerned, is cooperation and communication.
Yeah.
And you need to have both. It doesn't come from the top down and it doesn't come from the bottom up.
The loudest voices that screaming that always rise above the din is, we don't want our town to change.
Correct.
And I've tried to tell people, get out of the way. This is a moving train.
Exactly.
And it's going to run you over.
Right.
The only thing you can do is like what you said, is manage how the change occurs, how quickly, how big.
And be transparent about it. Yeah. And the people want the truth.
No.
And the sooner you put the truth out and you have a conversation about that, the better off you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we talked about this before the show, the optics. Most of the screaming that you hear, or mostly any reaction, is simply because of the way things look, because we don't get all the information.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you on that one. Well, just for giggles, we've spoken for about a half an hour. What do you want to say to your constituents and our listening audience that maybe we didn't touch on,
It's the elephant in the room. We are 23 days out from, in my estimation, the most consequential election that we've ever had. It's very important. There's no excuse. If it requires you to stand in line for 6 hours, it's the best, most important 6 hours you've ever spent. I believe that this election, from top down, is going to dictate the trajectory of our country in a very meaningful way. And we have a say about that. So we talked off mic about this, about educating yourself. There's information everywhere if you really, really want it. Educate yourself and vote and get everyone out to vote.
Yeah, that's a biggie. And we're on a college campus. So these are the minds that you want to give and just truthful information to from both sides. The things that are true. I think we need to anchor ourselves there because it's going to get a lot worse. It's like a storm. It dies down, but it doesn't go away like that. And even if the ringleader was not in the picture anymore, we still have an issue in America.
Correct. I agree.
He's put people in positions in almost every level of government. One example is the post office. We've still got that same guy, and apparently the way the laws are written, you can't just get rid of him. Even though he's getting rid of sorting machines, he's moving mailboxes, he's doing everything in his power to stop people from voting. I wish people would see that for what it is. They can say, well, we're doing this to help you because this mailbox is in a bad place. It's in a bad place because a lot of people use it. That's why it's a bad place. And generally, and I don't think I'm speaking out of tune to say this, but Republicans understand that when more people vote, they tend to lose.
And so the only alternative is to rig the game, make it more difficult to vote.
Yes. And the other thing that I think we're all bracing for is that idea that if he does lose, it's going to be a stolen election. And here we go again.
I say to you, I disagree.
Okay.
I don't suggest that there won't be rhetoric.
He's already talking about it.
And that's fine. But some people seem to forget when he ran the first time, he said he was going to lose. And he said it was all rigged. And when he won, that rhetoric evaporated. And it's the same thing now. And I think that January 6th for almost everyone had a very profound impact. And I suggest that even it's not going to be the same. I don't think so.
Right.
I think he loses. I'm sure he's going to say all of those things. My concern is not like another January 6th as we saw it. My concern is more if there is a legal challenge and it goes through the legal system, are we going to get a just determination about the legality of any kind of challenge that there is? And my faith has been called into question.
Right. We need a show or two more.
I would agree.
Anything else you can think of that
that's the most important thing right now. And I talked about the election and the importance of the election. And one of the reasons that I'm suggesting that is politics really, it's a cliche, but it's true. Politics are local. And
we say that all the time.
Yes. And I have a very, very vivid example of that just we were very successful. The state had a mandate to clean up or eradicate dioxin 1,4 from the drinking water. Mm-hmm. They have a standard 1 part per billion, which no one has that. The idea behind it is great. Mm-hmm. The issue is the funding. The Village of Hempstead has challenges meeting that standard, and they basically have to revitalize their entire water filtration system to the tune of over $50 million.
Right.
In the legislature, there's a pool of money for the legislators from the American Rescue Plan. Along with Legislator Silabino and myself, we saw help in some way to defray the expense that will be borne on the community.
Right.
We asked for some of that money. We were met with crickets. And this was March. As a result of that, we did press conferences, interviews, wrote letters, everything you could think of. And unfortunately, we weren't met with a great deal of success. However, ultimately, one of the advantages of being in the minority and there's not a supermajority, the administration has to bargain with us in order to pass to get their funding for going forward.
Right.
So the minority caucus got together and we all were in agreement that we weren't going to bargain or do anything until we get our fair share of some of these resources. We're not getting anything.
Yeah, right.
Because we stuck together and we prioritized getting that money for Hempstead as the main priority. Among other things, that was the main one. That worked. And it worked with the help of what we did, with the minority caucus sticking together, with the support of the Village of Hempstead, and the residents and the community. And so we stuck together.
Right.
And that is a true example of local government where the importance of everyone working together.
Yeah.
And you don't have that. They don't get their $1.75 million.
Yeah, right. But that's the first uphill battle, is just to get the people at the same table speaking about the same topic.
Sure.
I wish you all the best of luck.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
It sounds like you're doing good things in Rockville Centre.
I'm doing my best. Yeah. Thank you.
My guest today has been Nassau County Legislator Scott Davis, who represents the 1st District, which is comprised of the Village of Rockville Centre and the majority of the Village of Hempstead. And again, we want to thank him for taking the time to speak to us. But anyway, the clock on the wall says it's time for this week's Long Island News to get on out of here. I'm Bill McIntyre. Remember, you can always find us wherever you listen to podcasts by searching for WHPC and this week's Long Island News. And always right here on the radio every Friday at 3 p.m. on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.